Welcome to the C.L.I.M.B. This is a show dedicated to helping singers, songwriters, and indie artists like you create leverage in the music business. What is leverage? It's the strategic advantage. It's the power to act effectively. It's what you're going to need to be successful in the new music business. It means that when you're sitting at that table with a label, with a manager, with a publishing company, with a booking agent, they are going to need you more than you need them. And that's what, the labels are an acquisition-based business company now. They're acquisition-based business now. They're not going to sign you on your potential because they think you might be somebody great. They need to know what you've done. And that's why we called this podcast The C.L.I.M.B, C.L.I.M.B, creating leverage in the music business. Very clever. The wordsmith who came up with that is my good friend and co-host, Mr. Brent Baxter. Brent is an award-winning hit songwriter with cuts by Alan Jackson, Randy Travis, Lady Antebellum, Joe Nichols, and more. And Brent helps songwriters like you turn pro by revealing how you write like a pro, do business like a pro, and then not only that, he connects you with the pros on the regular. And you can find Brent at songwritingpro.com. Once again, that's songwritingpro.com.
That's right. And I would like to introduce you to my co-host, Johnny Dwinell. Johnny owns Daredevil Production. Daredevil has created over 25 national TV opportunities for their indie artists. Yes, indie artists on TV. How they do this? Daredevil did this by making them discoverable. They've also created multiple tour opportunities, and through the power of digital marketing data, they've attracted a number of investors for their artists. How they do that? Because investors know that numbers don't lie because numbers can't talk. You can find Johnny at daredevilproduction.com. That's production, singular, no S. There is no S because there is no other Johnny D.
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right, man.
All right.
Good to hang out with you.
Good to hang out with you, too. What are we going to learn today?
Well, today we're going to talk about, you probably heard the music biz is a relationship business, right? We've probably all heard that it's a relationship business. Well, I'm going to tell you it's more than just that. The music biz is a recommendation business. And so we're going to dive into that, share a couple stories, and hopefully change your thinking around a little bit more of that. Think a little more deeply on it, help you get where you want to go. That's what we're talking about.
Awesome. Well, before we get to that, let's take care of a little business here first. The C.L.I.M.B podcast is always proud to partner with disc makers who have been supporting indie musicians like you before indie music was even a thing. So when you're ready to make CDs, DVDs, vinyl, distribute your music and videos with customized USBs, discmakers.com is the only place you need to go. That's discmakers.com.
That's right. And while you're there, click the Guides and Resources tab and download some of their excellent free guides. They've just revised and expanded their home studio handbook, which has a ton of great advice and information for newbies and studio veterans. You can find them online at www.discmakers.com, discmakers.com, or give them a call at 800-468-9353. That's 800-468-9353.
Yes, sir. And if you haven't joined the C.L.I.M.B community yet, please do so. There's some good stuff going on there.
Yes.
Lots of commentary happening. Songwriters hooking up for co-writes. Different people with marketing questions that they're, hey, what about this specific situation? And then the community will chime in, and Brent and I will chime in. So you get some good information there, and
we try to keep it spam free. So
That's
it's
right.
A lot of Facebook groups or people just posting songs that nobody check it out. No one does, and no one cares.
That's right.
But here at the C.L.I.M.B community, we don't spam, we jam.
It's all killer and no filler.
That's right.
So join there. Make sure you've got a picture on your profile image for Facebook. Otherwise, you just look like spam. Speaking of spam, subscribe to the podcast so that every single episode comes right into your player there, and you'll consume them in order or however you want, whenever you want. It's all there and makes sense. And take 30 seconds and leave a 5-star rating and review.
Or take 5 seconds and leave a 30-star review if that's possible.
If they'll let you, that's cool. More stars, better. If 5 is good, 36 times better. And
that's math.
And then, hey guys, if you really like the content, if it's been helping you a lot, then do us a favor and share it. That's the best compliment you could give to us. So if you're doing it word of mouth, telling other people about it, helping them find it on their podcast player, that's awesome. or simply share the social media post that we put up with the links in it and let other people know what you think about it. That means the world to us, right?
It sure does.
All right, so let's get into this.
All right. So the music biz is a recommendation business. So, as we talked about before, you've often probably heard it called a relationship business, and it is. And that may just start off by ticking some people off, right? They just want it to be a music business. But I hate to tell you, it is a relationship business, but it's how you get those relationships that's often a matter of recommendations. So we're kind of taking a step back, like, oh, it's a relationship business. Well, how do I get relationships? Recommendations. All right.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
That thing up just a little bit.
So it starts with the relationships that you're going to need to be in a relationships business. Starts with recommendations.
Often starts with recommendations. So, so I'm going to tell you about a few referrals that I've gotten and how they've really affected my songwriting career. Okay. And why? Well, it's not about me and my story because I'm not bragging here. I'm sharing because I want to prove to you that recommendations matter. Okay. So I want to put some meat on the bone, give you some real world examples from my life. And then to go, okay, if you're not quite buying it yet, well, here's some examples from my life. And I'm living proof. So that's why I want to share some of these. And John, if you have some, and I know you do, feel free to hop on in here. So let's talk about a buddy of mine, Chad Green. So years ago, Chad was my ASCAP representative. ASCAP is one of the 3 PROs in the U.S. It's a performing rights organization. ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, basically they collect performance royalties for songwriters. Chad was my ASCAP representative at the time. So I picked up the phone, and at the time we had meetings. He picked up the phone and called Major Bob for me. At this point, Monday Morning Church had been cut, but it hadn't been released yet. No one much knew about it, but word was starting to get out. I had nothing else going on. I was an unknown writer with one cut to my name that hadn't been released yet. Couldn't get in to see a lot of publishers. I had gone by Major Bob, or I'd cold called them months before. And so they're a publisher in town, successful. I mean, it's owned by Garth Brooks' manager, Bob Doyle. He's the Bob and Major Bob. And so I was always a fan of their stuff. I called him up, hey, I'm a songwriter, and I'd like to send some songs. Like, yeah, drop them off. The face of the earth, apparently, because I never heard anything.
The face of the earth. Yeah.
Apparently, yes. Drop them off any old place. Never heard anything. But then I had a meeting with Chad, my ASCAP rep, and, well, he knew the guys over at ASCAP. So he picked up the phone. He called Mike.
Over at Major Bob, you mean?
Yeah, over at Major Bob. And so he picked up the phone and called Mike Doyle, who used to be over at ASCAP. Was actually one of the first people I met with at ASCAP. But Mike is Bob's son. Mike is over at Major Bob, on the creative department working with songwriters at that point. So he knows Mike. He called up Mike. Said, hey, Mike, I know you're looking for new writers. I got a new writer over here. Just got a Alan Jackson cut. I think you dig what he's doing. Can he, can I send his stuff over? Mike's like, yeah. And so I got a recommendation. That time they listened. I got a call back.
Yeah.
Before, when I called myself, I didn't have anything to recommend me. I couldn't say anything about the Alan Jackson cut yet or whatever, and never heard anything back. This time I got a recommendation from Chad, who Mike knew. And he respected his recommendation enough to listen. Then he liked what he heard enough to call me up, and we had a meeting. And that meeting ended up leading eventually to my first publishing deal with Major Bob.
That's awesome.
Nice recommendation. Thank you, Chad.
Yes, I like Chad.
Yeah, he's awesome. So, okay, so that's one recommendation. Also, back in the day, this was like 2005 or 6 or something. After 2002. I just moved to town. I used to do some gopher/bookkeeping for a producer in town named Miles, and he recommended I write with a young, unknown Canadian singer-songwriter named Aaron Goodvin. He was like 18 at the time and starting to make some trips down to Nashville. And so Aaron and I eventually, we started writing together. Good young dude, good young writer, and chasing the artist thing. And years later, Aaron, helped me land cuts on Canadian artist Drew Gregory and Sony Canada artist Tristan Horncastle. And now, years later, Aaron himself is a hit artist on Warner Music Canada, and he just recently signed a record deal with Reviver Records in Nashville. Reviver just had some hits with Low Cash and David Lee Murphy. Everything's Gonna Be All Right, and some of that stuff. And Aaron's on that label now. And Aaron and I have this relationship. And I had him recently as a guest on Know the Row over at Freddie. And he and I've gotten in the room recently and done some more writing. And he's just a good dude. We have that connection. Why? Because Miles recommended me to him and him to me. His recommendation. It was a hookup, and it's paid off in cuts and relationship with an artist.
Yeah.
So recommendations.
Genius, right?
Yeah, what do you know? Yeah, through a relationship. And through that recommendation, I now have a relationship with Aaron and other people too. All right, so separate recommendations by co-writers Lisa Schaefer and Brandon Kinney led to my third publishing deal, a deal with Writers Infinity. So I was out of a deal, a publishing deal, and I was shopping around, and I'm letting my co-writers know, hey, I'm looking for a deal, whatever, shopping around. And actually, on the other side of the equation that, I didn't know about, Paul Compton had a guy that was interested maybe in doing some investing, and he was looking for a writer, and he knew Lisa Schaefer, and she mentioned my name to him, and Brandon Kinney mentioned my name to him, and they helped connect us. I ended up getting a publishing deal out of that with an investor and writing songs and getting cuts and stuff out of that catalog. So that was recommendations.
Yeah.
I didn't know, I'd met Paul before, but I didn't know him. I didn't know he was looking, that wasn't a tree that I barked up this go round. Because he wasn't known enough to me at that point. I didn't know what was going on. But people that knew what was going on recommended that we get together. Recommendations. Like 2 publishing deals now,
Because of recommendations, right? And let's revisit that first one for a second and how that came about. So you initially sent in your stuff, same songs.
To Major Bob, probably a lot of the same songs. Yeah.
A lot of the same songs. And it just, they probably didn't listen to it.
They probably didn't listen to it because I had nothing to recommend me, right? I'm just one more writer called up, didn't have anything going on as far as they knew that I could talk about. So just one more writer. So
I want to break that down a little bit because I want to talk about how I purposely crafted a recommendation to somebody that I really needed to get to, but I wanted to do it the right way. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So one of 2 things happened with that publishing thing, with that first submission that you made to Major Bob. Either they just didn't listen to it or they did listen to it, but it didn't feel right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And I think that no matter which one of those scenarios is the truth, everything changed with the recommendation. Right. Yes. Because then they did listen to it. Or if they already heard it before, they're like, this is okay. All right. And now, of course, that came in with somebody else saying that you got the cut, right? With Alan Jackson.
Yeah. And somebody else saying I'm good. I think.
And somebody else saying that you're good. Right. So I when we talk about like, this is really interesting because we're talking about it being a recommendation industry and how sometimes I think people feel stuck. Like, how can I get in? How can I make a relationship if I'm not doing this or if I'm not doing that? And typically, I used to be kind of involved in a studio on Music Row, and like Tin Pan South was always like a nightmare because we'd have the regular onslaught of visitors on
just random
people walking out the street. They look like tourists.
I got my pink cowboy hat on and I'm coming up in here, busting up, going, hey, is Garth in here?
Yeah, exactly. And here's my CD. You produce songs here, and wow, okay. Like totally cold, right in the trash, right? What are you going to do?
We do business.
Yeah. It's not the way to do it. So how do you do it? So with Jacob Cade, who we worked with for the better part of, I think, probably 2 years, prior to that, Michael Wagner, who's a legendary producer, over 100 million records sold. He's produced Ozzy Osbourne. He's produced Alice Cooper, Queen. He produced Skid Row. He mixed the first Motley Crue record. He mixed Master of Puppets for Metallica, which changed the world. He mixed. He mixed Look What the Cat Dragged In from Poison. Like big stuff, right? Yeah. And I know who Michael was the producer for most of the records that were the soundtrack of my youth. If it was awesome, White Lion. All that stuff.
Music's how I spent my misspent youth.
That's right. So I've seen Michael a couple times prior, out at this show or that show or whatever, or this club or that club, and I never bothered to go up and introduce myself. I didn't really have anything to say to him other than I was going to come off sounding like a fanboy.
Yeah. You didn't have any value to bring, right? No value to add.
Exactly. So first of all, through that act of discretion, I'm curating a better meeting someday. Right.
Yeah.
And then I get Jacob Cade and we're working. It's very clear to me, okay, here's the opportunity. Like, they got a budget and they're serious about making a record, and I'm going to go talk to Michael and be able to come in to his awareness and with some value, right? Like with an artist that I think he might like. And Michael doesn't work like, he didn't got to work with you if he doesn't like it. Like it's he's not in the studio business. He's got like a multi-million-dollar studio in his backyard, and he's like, I'll do whatever, you know.
He does what he wants to do.
Does what he wants. He works with who he wants, exactly. And so I thought, well, man, you know, I was 1 degree of separation from Michael. Like I knew a bunch of people that had worked with him and that knew him. So I just called Paul Taylor, my friend Paul Taylor from Winger. You know, Paul's written with a bunch of my artists. I've known Paul for a number of years. He's a sweetheart of a guy. And I called him up and I said, hey, Paul, I think at that point, I think Jacob had written with Paul. And I think so. And I was like, hey, would you be willing to, I think I've got a project. I think Jacob's project would be great for Michael. I think he would be like, this is all him, you know, cause Jacob's like a 19-year-old, like 80s rock guitar god, you know, he's like amazing. And he really is amazing. Like he's like, no, there's no sour notes in that kid's repertoire. Like he pisses me off in that regard. You know, I'm like, damn, you know, I never played like that, you know? So I said, Paul, would you be willing to introduce me to Michael? Like, you know, to come through you, because I think this would be cool. And Paul was like, man, of course. Hold on a second. He goes, I think that's right. I think you're right about that. You know? So he agreed with me. And 10 minutes later, I get a text back from Paul and he's like, hey, here's Michael's number. He said, give him a call whenever he wants. But I set that up instead of me cold calling him. I wanted that recommendation. Yeah. Because I wanted somebody else to say that this artist was good and that I was worth the time that he was going to spend exploring this opportunity. Yeah. Right. Like, and sure enough, like I sent him some stuff and on Jacob, and he's like, yeah, man, I like it. He's got a German accent, you know. He's like, I would love to work with Jacob. He's amazing, man. I'm like, I know, dude. And he's like, yeah, let's do it, you know. And we talked about the project and the strengths and the weaknesses and what we would do. And then, I mean, from that, we have and first, so I didn't know Michael, you know, and so my first meeting with him is an exercise in trying to sit still, like, and not just freak out. Cause like some of the amps he used, I've seen them in Circus Magazine back in the day. You know what I mean? And in this, they're there. He still has them. I'm like, I know what that is right there. Oh my God. You know, and I'm just trying to keep cool. You know what I mean? Like I belong. Like last episode. Yeah, I'm just trying to act like I've been in the end zone before. Yeah, but this is the big one. You know, I mean, I've been around lots of really big people, but this is for me. This is a lot. You know, like my guy. So, but then from that, like, there's a huge like rock star. Her name is Lizzie Hale. She's Hailstorm, and her husband Joe Hottinger. I mean, they wrote with Jacob on a recommendation from Michael. Bam. You know, and now that added all kinds of value when that single came out. That was the second single. When that single came out, it happened to come out at the same time that Hailstorm's new single came out. And so they did they do this thing in radio where they'll do an interview, and like the DJ that actually does the interview will record it. And but then they'll cut up the answers. Right. So one time, Lizzie, who's extremely busy, and Jacob, who's not as busy as Lizzie, but busy, you know, like their schedules aren't going to match for every single radio station, but they can package that up and make it look like every DJ in every town is the one interviewing them. Right. That's what they do. And so she agreed to do that, you know, and all of a sudden that became a single, and we got pictures of them writing together. That's social proof. I mean, all that sprung from a recommendation, right? From me getting one recommendation to get to Michael, and Michael, of course, had to like the artist, and Jacob is phenomenal, and worked his butt off to get to be able to take advantage of that opportunity, right? Like it's a door opener, not a deal closer. That's right. And then Michael makes the recommendation to Lizzie, and then that works out. And then that's what gets him on the Planet Axe tour, which gets him the big deal, the big management deal. Mm-hmm. You know, where he we incubated him and we did our job. We incubated him enough to where it was like, now he was really sexy to a much bigger company that could take him to the next level. Yeah. And so that's what they did. But that started with a recommendation, you know?
I know. And that's how do you get a relationship with Michael Wagner? Get a recommendation.
Yeah. Yeah, and wait for the right time. Yes. You know, like mm-hmm. instead of trying to do it cold or whatever, or mm-hmm. instead of trying to tell him that, hey, I develop artists and I do all this stuff,
and therefore I have a vested interest in you working with this guy. It sounds like you're helping me out. Versus, you know, Paul Taylor mentions it to Wagner, then he respects Paul, and sounds like, oh, it could be something that Michael would enjoy. So there's value there for him.
Yeah. And in that regard, if you remember, I said I was like 1 degree of separation from Michael with a number of people, right?
Yeah.
So that was, of course, intentionally part of the way I was directing the narrative on that first conversation was we got a lot of mutual friends, Michael.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love her. I love him. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They were great, you know, and then we're just going back and forth and telling stories, and we're becoming friends on the phone, you know? And, but that was so... It was a chess move, man. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't have crafted that any better, if I don't say so myself, man. I'm very proud of that. And now I've done 2 projects with Michael, where, you know, where we've been able to work that closely together. So, but that's the power of the recommendation. Right?
Yes.
So I think like a tool that you could take from this is when you're trying to get to, sometimes you don't know the person that you want to get to,
right?
But maybe you know a person who knows the person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like the LinkedIn thing, only in real life, and it works better.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And like for me with Chad and Major Bob, I didn't know who was going to pick up the phone and call. I didn't know his Rolodex.
Yeah.
You know, but he was connecting the dots going, here's a writer here that I like him and I like his music, and he's in a place I think he's ready for something. And now who do I know that's looking for that? Because, you know, he like, I can solve a problem for Brent across the desk from me. And I can solve a problem for Major Bob who's looking, you know, and I can put it together, and he made the recommendation. I didn't even go in there. I didn't know to go, hey, can you hook me with Major Bob? Or somebody's like, here's my goals and here's some of my music. What do you think? And boom, recommendation. And
so let me ask you a question. What was the difference in time? What was the time difference between when you submitted that material to Major Bob cold and to when Chad made the phone call?
Man, maybe like a month.
Okay, so it was close.
Yeah, it was close. So probably the same songs on the comp. It just, I think I sent to Major Bob it was during the time when Alan had cut Monday Morning Church, but they wanted to keep that kind of hush hush until Alan presented the project to the label. So he could, you know, like, here's the songs, here's everything, boom, without word getting around about what all he'd cut. So, so try sitting on that as a new writer with your first cut on it.
You're like, I'm really awesome and I can't tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, that was fun. But so anyway, so it was probably during that time, I think, summer of 2004. And then shortly after that, you know, no response from Major Bob. Then word starts getting out. I had my meeting with Chad. Yeah, that was part of his recommendations. I had something going on. But even if I hadn't had that going on, I would have got a listen. I would have gotten a fair listen, because someone in a position like a Chad or anyone at ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC, or any of these other places, they can't recommend everything that comes through their door, because that kills their credibility. Most stuff is not ready. And so they don't recommend everything because people will stop listening.
Right.
And part of their value in the community is connections and credibility, right? Street cred. Yeah. If they recommend every schmuck that walks through just because they don't want to feel bad about saying, you know, about not recommending them, then they cut themselves off at the knees.
That's right.
So Mike would have said, okay, Chad doesn't recommend everything. I like his ears and I respect him. I'm going to give this a listen. So even if I didn't have the Allen thing going on, they still it would have taken me a step that I didn't get to before.
Yeah. You know? And through that recommendation, again, you're not so much of an imposter, right? Like,
no,
like
I was invited in.
Yeah, exactly. Like a vampire.
A pro. Exactly. No, exactly. Now you can't get relieved unless you stab me in the heart. Or drop me. So yeah. And so that's important. I mean, there's another one, with Chad. I mean, And at this point, this is years later, Chad's a music publisher. And he recommended I write with an unsigned singer-songwriter from Georgia named Jason Wilkes. So Jason had since gone on to sign, a publishing deal with Dan Hodges, had a successful run on NBC's The Voice. And, I have a co-write on his EP that just dropped, not too long ago called Jealous of the Night. And, it's on his EP and, he's shopping around and doing the deal. And I didn't know about Wilkes. I had my own stuff going on, but I was looking for a certain type of co-write. And Chad said, hey, you should check this guy out. And so the publishing deal and The Voice and all that stuff came after.
Right.
So thanks again, Chad.
Yep.
So it's just another example of you get relationships by recommendations. And, so a lot of people go, okay, well, how do I start doing that? How do I start getting songs heard? And often I say, you got to get your songs in the pipeline, and you got to get yourself in the pipeline. There are a few places you can drop in the pipeline, right? So to start getting some recommendations, start getting some relationships if you have the goods. So one place is your PRO, ASCAP, CSAC, BMI, or wherever they are in your country, wherever you're listening. Mm-hmm. Those tend to be a little more open, not totally easy to get into just because of the numbers. It's hard to get a meeting because they only have so much time. But if you can do that, get a meeting. If you have the goods, you'll start making a fan. And then they may recommend you to some other writers they're working with that are on the way up. They may be able to pick up the phone and call a publisher. Don't expect it, right? Most of the time they're not going to do it. They got to be real selective. But they're a way to start getting the pipeline and start building some relationships. Another good place is NSAI. They have opportunities for you to connect with pros, Songwriting Pro. I do a play for publisher event. Yeah. Each quarter, pretty much. And if you have the goods and you're one of the ones, I'll connect you with the publisher guest. And I've had people that have gone on to, have multiple meetings with publishers and they're climbing that ladder and making new relationships based on the recommendation. Because basically when I do that, I'm recommending this writer and the song to this publisher. I'm acting as a go-between. I'm acting as the, I'm curating all these songs and songwriters that come in and go, here are the 10 that I think would interest you. Yeah. You have the best chance of interesting you. And so they listen because I've curated that and I bring them good stuff. And then if they connect with it, they often, have gone on to continue that relationship. And so that's another way to get in the pipeline. We have events like, Know the Pro over at Freddie and Songwriting Pro that happen every once in a while. It's a chance to get some FaceTime with a pro in the business. And so there's some ways to do that. Songwriting workshops, going to live events, like the C.L.I.M.B conference we had earlier, at this point last year. Yeah. Where, we were there with Chris Oglesby and Shelby Kennedy, and it's a chance to meet somebody, start getting a connection. Maybe you get a recommendation out of that. Maybe they know somebody, that kind of stuff. You just got to be patient with it. Yeah. You can't walk in expecting a recommendation right off the bat with somebody.
But be thinking about it. Like, how can we make this happen? And I think, when you're showing up to that first point of entry into the pipeline, like, make sure you sound professional. Exactly. Right? Yeah. Like, have some kind of decent recordings of your song. Yeah. If you've got some co-writes going that maybe somebody else who is recognizable, right? Who they might know. Doesn't have to be famous, but maybe it's like, hey, I've done this or done that. Mm-hmm. I think, ways to stack the deck towards moving to be able to get a recommendation. If you've gotten cuts from a local artist that are, that just states somebody else liked your music enough to cut it
in a different box.
Yeah.
A different category.
Like, this is what I want to do my whole life. It's like, I'm doing it with or without you. Yeah. Want to get on board?
Yeah, exactly.
This very silently kind of says that, and you can generate a recommendation that way a little bit quicker. So, don't, I would be out on the scene if I was a writer locally, like wherever you're at, like I would be there and who's all the people that are writing and, make sure you're in front of their faces and creating relationships there. And,
so many co-writes have come from co-writer recommendation. Hey, you should write with so-and-so. Or, hey, maybe they know the artist or someone and they call me up and want to bring me in. Yeah. Hey, you should write with so-and-so. So I got recommended into a room with an artist or with somebody else, that sort of thing. That that's a recommendation that's huge as well. And you do that by being professional, showing up, doing good work, being nice, being a good hang, and then you can get recommended into some of those. But if you're a jerk and you're looking past people to who's a bigger fish in the room, that's going to short circuit a lot of that. And I just want to talk about, as we close up, there are a couple of reasons, I think a couple broad categories that why someone might make a recommendation, either to you or for you. The first broad category is they want to help themselves. So if a co-writer brings you in to write with an artist because they know you'll kill it, and you do kill it, who comes out looking good?
That co-writer.
The co-writer who hooked you up, right? Because he's a hero, right? Or she's a hero. He or she gets to be the one who made it all happen. Plus, that your co-writer benefits from being part of a better song. So, and that also strengthens that co-writer's tie with the artist. Like, hey, you brought in so-and-so. Now you're kind of the link to that, between that artist and that writer, and it adds your value and your leverage.
Can I stop you right there for a second? So in that situation, this is where you publicly call that out. Like it means everything in the world, but this is a social grace that means the world, right? When that person does that hookup, brings you into co-write with an artist that you don't know, and it works out and you got a killer song. Well, that's where in front of the artist, you want to praise the co-writer and say, thank you. Like, I'm so grateful you brought me into this because this worked out really well. I had a great time writing with you and it's all because of you. So thank you so much. And then, you're number one, you're thanking the person that did the gesture, but number two, you're making that person look really good in front of that artist, which is what they're doing it for, right?
Yeah, exactly.
To try to help themselves. And so, that's just a moment that you want to take and do it publicly. Like,
because you look humble, you look grateful, and those are attractive qualities, right? So you makes you look even better to the artist. Yeah. Not like they're lucky to be in the room with you. Want to play that game. So also, like if a publisher hooks you up to write with a pro, it's because, the publisher hopes that you either already have the goods or that publisher can help you develop the goods. Why? So that publisher can publish your hits and make money off you. Yeah. That's why. Your relationships are definitely not going to hook you up if they think you'll make them look bad to their friends or to their bosses. Why should they do that? Even if you're friends and that person wants to help you, what's the point? If you don't have the skills or the personality to take advantage of the opportunity, you might feel good in the moment, but all you're really going to accomplish is wasting someone's time and hurting your reputation. To recommend somebody that's not ready, to get them in a room where they drown because they're over their head. It doesn't help your friend, and it sure doesn't help you. So usually people will make recommendations to you or for you based on self-interest. They know it's going to come back around and help them.
That's right.
The other reason may be to help someone else. So maybe your contact will hook people up or pass along some song with little or no self-interest. Maybe they think you'll be a great co-writing team or just good friends, or he knows that artist X needs a hit and believes your song is it, so he passes it along. So that's awesome too. And they still come out looking like a hero, right?
Yep.
Your contact may not have any direct financial stake in the recommendation, but they still benefit from the goodwill, the hero status that making a great recommendation comes with. And so they help other people without it like a direct, really monetary benefit or anything to them. So, and man, us, we talk about on the Song Title Challenge, just invite us to the number one party. We like hero status. We like to help people.
We're not above that at all. Like, not at all. Even if they don't have drinks there, I'll show up. Just be cool. Just look cool.
But I just climbers. I just wanted y'all to think about that. Sometimes before the relationship comes a recommendation. Yeah. And if you think strategically about that, okay. And not lead with the, hi, who are you going to recommend me to? Yeah. Start with the relationship, be professional. Hopefully you got the goods. If that works, that can lead to recommendations, but be aware of it. Like, hey, do you know someone I'd be a good hang with or a good writer with, or someone that's part of your goals? Like you said, when you sat down with Chad, you talked about your goals, and here's what I'm trying to do. Well, one of the things I'm trying to do is a publishing deal. Is a publishing deal, and meet some other writers, and meet some other people that could I could add some value to. If you think I'm worthy, you know what I mean? Like even when you are, or maybe you're not sure. Yeah. It's still their opinion. You're putting it on them. Yeah. It's going to be their opinion that's going to make the decision. So if you feel like this is cool enough, like anybody else, that would be one of my goals, is just to try to find some people who believe in what I'm doing enough to connect me with some other people so that I can
get some more co-writes in there. I just want to work, you know,
That's
I just
right.
want to write. I mean, that's what they want to hear. Right.
Mm-hmm. Heck yeah. And, you know, just closing up for listening, I got a little gift for you.
There you go.
Yeah. I have a free ebook. It's called Think Like a Pro Songwriter. And it involves stuff like this in there that I've just picked up through my years of being a pro writer and being in and around the music business. And it's my gift to you. You can go to giftfrombrent.com. You can check it out. You can just tell me where to email it, and I email you access to it so you can download it. And hopefully it'll help you on your journey. And if you like it, you can share that link with a friend and be a hero to them. Make a recommendation that's going to help them on their journey. And you could be a little bit of a hero too, which is not a bad thing. But giftfrombrent.com.
There you go. All right, guys. Well, once again, join the C.L.I.M.B community if you haven't done so already. There's lots of amazing stuff going on there. Be good boys and girls, or we will roadhouse you. Subscribe to the podcast so that every episode comes down in order into your podcast player. Take 5 seconds, 20 seconds. Leave a 5-star rating and review. Let other people know what you think about the show. And then finally, the best compliment that you could give Brent and I would be to share it. And either tell a friend and give a recommendation. Hello.
There we go.
We're straight up asking you, like, if you're enjoying this, recommend us to a friend. And do it on social media too, because that's why we ask. Because we're like, hey, if you're listening to this, if you listened all the way through to the end, you must have found some value in it. And we'd certainly appreciate your recommendation. It helps, tell a friend that like, hey, these guys are legit, man. Check them out. That means the world to us. So this podcast exists because we want you to win, guys. So keep on climbing.
And we'll see you at the top.